So let's experiment again with this spacious meditation. So if the mind went in its habitual burring during the break, we'll see if we can just play with another possibility. And so again, you'll touch base with the space that you have, and whatever passes through, outer sounds, feelings, smells, fine, let them go. You stay with your emphasis on the spaciousness. Whatever internally comes, just stay with your emphasis on the spaciousness. Not stay with a holding, a kind of violence, but just resting in the spaciousness, feeling like you could hold whatever comes through. So nothing, you don't need to get attached. It's no one's problem or faults. You know, a horn honks outside. It's no disturbance to your meditation. No problem, okay? So we'll do that for about 5 minutes, and then Caitlin, when you feel about 5 minutes has passed, you can just begin, or whoever is beginning, Sandy or whoever's starting to play. So I'll let you guys, will sense the timing, okay? from the great above.
She opened her ear to the great below. From all that was known, she opened her wisdom to all that is unknown. From all that she had power over, she listened to that which had no power. The Queen of heaven and earth abandoned the worldly place for the underworld. Our Lady, the Queen of heaven and earth, abandoned all she knew for that which is unknown. Inanna, the Queen of heaven and earth, abandoned her position and descended to the darkness. She left all of her worldly places. One by one, she removed herself from her temple, her home, her workplace, all the spots where she was known and knew herself. She retracted. She gathered together the 7 powers called the Me. She gathered together the 7 Me. And she adorned herself and prepared herself for her journey. She placed on her head her crown. She put around her neck her beautiful lapis beads. She put also on the long string of beads that rested down by her heart. She wrapped herself in her finest garments. She placed the breastplate of power over her chest and belly called "Come, Man, Come." She put the ring on her wrist. She held in her hand the scepter, and she felt prepared to make her descent. As she began her journey, her faithful guide, Ninshubura, was by her side always and ever like her shadow. As Inanna approached the door of the underworld, she said to Ninshubara, "My dear, faithful servant and guide, you who are with me at all times, you who are my light, my wisdom, my heart, you who fight with me, you who stand with me, you who know me so deeply. I beg you that if I am lost in the underworlds, if I do not return in 3 days and 3 nights, that you go to my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, and you tell them, do not let your daughter be lost. Do not let your daughter disappear. You tell them that I need help, and you pray and beg to them to come and help me. For I know at that point I will no longer be able to have the power to do it myself. Go and go in mourning, rend your garments and cry out for me, that my name be heard and that my plight be heard by those who can hear and those who have a heart to help." Ninshubura agrees, and though it is painful, she leaves her lady and continues on her own. Inanna continues on her journey, and she reaches the gates of the underworld. She bangs loudly against the gates, pounds her body into the gates that someone might hear her, and this call that she has received to descend continue and be received. Neti, the gatekeeper to the underworld, opens the door a little bit and says, Who are you? She says, I am Inanna, on my way to the east. You see, she is like the sun, so she's made her setting into the west now. She's in the darkness, but she knows she's on the way to the east. And she says, I have come. He said, why would you come to the underworld? Why you, so full of light, so full of the world? Why do you come here? She says, immediately without thinking, I've come to see my sister, the queen of the underworld, this other half of herself. And then she thinks again and she says, I've come because her husband has died, and I've come to witness the funeral rites. Please, let me pass in, that I might see what occurs here. Nettie shuts the door, and he goes through the 7 gates of the underworld and into the throne room of the queen of the underworld, Ereshkigal, Inanna's sister. And he says, your sister is here. Inanna is here on her way to the east, full of the light, full of the world. She's come. Ereshkigal bites her lip and slaps her thigh. Oh, she knows that this is going to be a fearsome meeting. So she thinks to herself, and then she says, okay, Nettie, you may let her in, but I want you to open each gate only a little bit. And as she passes through, you must remove one of her powers, because she can only come to me fully bare. Nettie agrees. He says, yes, my queen, I will do so. And he goes back through the 7 gates to the first gate and opens it a crack and invites Inanna to come in. As she passes the thresholds of the first of the 7 gates, he removes her crown from her head. What is this? She asks. Shh. Quiet, Inanna. Do not question the rules of the underworld. The rules of the underworld are perfect. Inanna quiets herself, set on her intention and her journey, and she crosses the threshold through the first gate. The threshold of the second gate. Her beads that lie around her throat are stripped from her. What is this? She says. Shh. Quiet, Inanna. Do not question the rules of the underworld. The rules of the underworld are perfect. And though she is distraught and slightly confused, she continues along her way, fierce in her intention to complete her journey. And she crosses the threshold of the second gate. She reaches the threshold of the third gate. The beads that drape around and rest, warming her heart, are stripped from her. What is this? She asks again. Shh, quiet, Inanna. The rules of the underworld are perfect. Do not question the rules of the underworld. And yet again, she relinquishes this power and crosses across the threshold of the third gate. At the fourth gate, the breastplate that covers her, called Come, Man, Come, is ripped from her. What is this? She says, ever more exposed and raw. Quiet, Inanna, do not question the rules of the underworld. The rules of the underworld are perfect. She hears this deep in her being, and she knows she must continue, and she crosses across the threshold of the fourth gate. As she reaches the threshold of the fifth gate, the ring that is around her wrist is pulled from her. What is this? Quiet, Inanna, the rules of the underworld are perfect. Do not question the rules of the underworld. And she passes the threshold of the fifth gate. At the threshold of the sixth gate, her scepter is torn from her hand. What is this? Quiet, Inanna, the rules of the underworld are perfect. Do not question the rules of the underworld. And she relinquishes her powers and crosses the threshold of the sixth gate. And as she reaches the final threshold of the seventh gate, all the garments that cover her body are torn from her. What is this? Quiet, Inanna. Do not question the rules of the underworld. The rules of the underworld are perfect. She, utterly stilled, stripped, bare, naked, bows her head so low almost to touch the earth and crosses under the gate, the seventh gate of the underworld, and into the throne room of the queen of the underworld, her sister, her other side, her shadow, Ereshkigal. Ereshkigal is a fearsome sight, all that Inanna is not. She is everything that is static, barren, dark, terrifying. She has equal power in her own right to Inanna. And she stands up from her throne to greet her sister. And as she does, Inanna, without thinking, in the role that she has always played, the role of queen of herself, so full of her self-power, crosses to sit on the throne of her sister, to take the throne from her. Bad idea. The 7 judges of the underworld appear, and they pass their judgment upon her. Ereshkigal fixes the eye of death upon her sister, and she strikes her down. And Inanna is killed, turned into a rotting corpse, a rotting piece of meat, and hung upside down on a hook on the wall of the throne room. 3 days pass, 3 nights pass. Ninshubur has been waiting. The spiritual side of Inanna, the guide, the innermost pure realm of her being, has been waiting and has heard nothing. So she goes into mourning. She goes to Inanna's father as she agreed that she would do. And she says to her father, "You must help your daughter. Your daughter has gone to the underworld. She's gone to the great unknown. She's abandoned all that she knows and has followed her quest. And she's been lost. You must help her." And the father says, "I won't help her. Those who know the powers of the underworld do not return. Those who go to the underworld are not fit to come back." He says, "Go away." Ninshibar continues in her mourning, wailing, crying out to all who will listen. And she goes to Inanna's great-grandfather, and she says, "You must help your great-granddaughter. She's gone to the underworld. She's followed her path. She's gone to the great unknown. She's let go of all that she knew so that she might go and have a rebirth in the East, and you must help her." And he says, "I will not help her. I do not agree with this journey. I do not understand the rules of the underworld, and I am afraid of someone who has the powers of the underworld. Let her stay there. Please go. Leave me alone." Ninshibar leaves again, continues her mourning, and finally she comes to the house of Enki, Inanna's great-great-grandfather, on the mother's side, who is also known as the god of wisdom. And she says to Enki, "Please help your great-granddaughter, your great-great-granddaughter. She's gone into the unknown. She's disappeared. It's been 3 days and 3 nights. You must help her. She needs help." And he says, "I feel for her, and I feel for her journey, and I wish to help her." And he unfurls his very long fingers, fingers that can reach into the heart of all beings. And he stretches them out along the sky, and he sweeps the sky, and then takes his fingernails down along the earth and draws his long fingernails along the earth, could make rivers flow. And he gathers the dirt that are under his fingernails, and from the dirt he fashions 2 creatures. These creatures have no gender, they have no desire, They are pure, open empathy. And he says to them, I need you to go, to fly like flies through the cracks of the underworld, to go into Eresh Kigal's chamber, to the queen of the underworld's chamber. She even now is in such deep pain. She is giving birth and she does not know what she is giving birth to. And when she cries, oh, my heart, you must respond. Oh, my heart. And when she cries, oh, my back, you must respond. Oh, my back, you must feel her. When she cries, oh, my insides, you must respond. Oh, my insides. And he sends these creatures of empathy, these creatures of compassion, born of great wisdom, on their journey. And they go and they slip like flies through the cracks of the underworld, unseen. They don't call up any flags in the underworld because they have no desire, they have no sex, they have no gender. They're almost invisible. And they appear in the throne room of Eresh Kigal. And there she is, just as was predicted, her hair like snakes flowing out, her breasts huge, this great mother, moaning and whining in pain. She says, oh, my outsides. And she hears, oh, your outsides. She says, oh, my insides. Oh, your insides. Oh, my back. Oh, your back. Oh, my heart. Oh, your heart. Oh, my liver. Oh, your liver. Oh, my head. Oh, your head. And then she stops. She's never heard this before. No one's ever called back to her. And she says, who are you who feel what I feel? What is this? And they say, we feel your pain. She says, I'm so moved by you. If you are a god, I bless you doubly. And if you are a human, I bless you and I will give you whatever you need. She says, can I give you a gift of land? And they say, no, thank you, we don't need a gift of land. She says, can I give you a gift of water, the water gift? And they say, no, thank you, we don't need the water gift. She says, what can I give you? I'll give you anything for being with me at this time. And they say, we would like the corpse that's hanging on the wall of your throne room. And she says, that's the corpse of my sister, Inanna. And they say, well, whoever it is, that is what we wish. She says, I agree. And she takes the corpse off the wall and she hands it to these two creatures. And these two creatures who have been given these special powers of empathy, they also hold two other gifts, the gifts of water and the gifts of life, the gifts of food. And they offer these two, they sprinkle these gifts on the body, and Inanna revives and is reborn. Now she's reborn. She immediately thinks, I'm going to get out of the underworld. I'm going to leave here. And she goes to the gates and goes through the gates. And as she gets to the last gates, she notices that she's been followed by the Gala. Now the Gala are special demons that each of us have. We each have our own Gala. And so normally we try to avoid our demons, or we just have repressed them so deeply we don't even know them. But because Inanna has gone through this death and rebirth, she's in the rare position to have her demons as companions, ones who are with her. And the Gala, they know no rest. They don't eat any food. They have no family. They have no children to kiss. They don't have sex. They don't have jobs. They do nothing but to be present with you. And they say, you can't leave the underworlds unless someone comes and takes your place. We can't possibly just let you go. So Inanna hears this and she says, I understand, right? You can't now have gone through this and then just avoid it. You have to take it with you, and someone must take this journey as well. So she goes back out into the world. She meets her guide, Ninshubur, Ninshubur is in mourning for her. She thanks her. She meets her 2 sons. She comes back to her 2 sons. Her 2 sons are wailing, mourning for her. She knows that they don't need to be sent to the underworlds. They are in full possession of their empathy, of their compassion. And then she gets to her husband, Dumuzi. And in Inanna's absence, during Inanna's deep internal journey, Dumuzi has spent the time gathering his worldly power ever more strongly. And she comes and he's sitting on his throne, fully in glory. And unlike Ereshkigal, who gets up to meet her sister when her sister arrives, Dumuzi doesn't even move. And he just looks down at Inanna. Inanna, who's now, Lord knows what she looks like. She's returning from the underworlds. You know, you think about someone who's returned from 40 days in the desert or something, right? She's surrounded by her demons, and he can see or not see them, but he senses them. And he senses the degree of power that she holds. And he reacts to that, not to come towards her, but to hold ever more onto his own power tightly. He's in fear of what it is that she comes with, the degree of wisdom that she comes with. And she sees this, and really she doesn't have any choice. So she looks at him, he sees her, they meet eyes, and in that moment she fixes him with the eye of death. And his gala, his demons arise. And she says, I have to send you. I have to send you on this journey. And he's ignited into this journey himself. Now his story is quite long, and we won't go through it today. But I will say that his journey involves attempt after attempt to avoid the journey to the underworld. He first goes back to his home. He hides from his demons. His demons find him at every point. The Gala find him at every place he hides. And oftentimes they beat him up, they rough him up, right? He goes through some kind of extreme situation, and then he prays to the god to be transformed. And he transforms himself into a snake. He transforms himself into a gazelle. He transforms himself into all kinds of other shapes other than himself to try to avoid this journey that he clearly needs to take. He hides from them. He asks other people to tell them to look for him somewhere else. And eventually, of course, they find him. Eventually, he relinquishes, and he is also taken to the underworld. And he has a very different story, but he comes back to and returns. So these two, and then he and Inanna are joined. The male and the female are joined in union, having fully gone through the upper and the lower realms. And a whole new world order is born from this. So this story of Inanna's descent to the underworld, this is a story from ancient Sumeria, comes 2,000, 3,000 years before Christ. And there's a long mythology of Inanna's spiritual journey and life that's very beautiful. So we can think about the two ways that we receive the call. There's the internal call, like Inanna has, this internal turning, where our force to go outwards in our worldly life is changed, and we, for whatever reason, have this desire to go inwards. Tolstoy, the great writer Tolstoy, when he was around 50, he has a beautiful long description of his own process of this. And he says, I can't really understand. I'm happily married. I have a great, career. I'm really happy in my life. And for whatever reason, it seems that I want my life to end. And he doesn't mean in a violent way, like I'm trying to kill myself or something like that. But it's like he says that he's covered all the options, and now he's going, what else? What is there, right? And he describes this intensive pulling in, this intensive focusing on the inner space. And we hear this term, the call. You can read about it in all kinds of traditions, spiritual and non-spiritual. this sense of being called to some interior space, to the great unknown, to that which is the opposite of our outer life force, that which brings stasis, that which brings stillness, so that we might know the fullness. We all know the movement, right? But the underworld is marked by a stasis, by a barrenness. They say the upper world is fecund and the underworld is totally barren. And we need both of those places in our life, right? So it's the whole season, this idea that we sort of only want to deal with spring and summer, and we're avoiding as much as possible winter and fall. So we can receive the call inwardly, mysteriously, or we can receive the call like Inanna's husband does, outwardly, provoked by something we see, perhaps the death of a loved one, something that makes us go, what is this? What's going on, right? Or our demons suddenly arrive, right? And we've exhausted all our possibilities for avoiding our demons. And eventually we have to be with them. We have to go through that path with them. So either outer or inner, these are our two, ignited by something out to go into the underworld, or called by something within to go to the underworld. It's very fascinating, this idea. She opens her ear. How do we do that? How do we open? And the ear, I don't speak that language, but in the commentaries that I've read, it says that the word for ear is the same as the word for wisdom. So it's like to hear is to hear a deeper wisdom, right? So how do we listen for a deeper wisdom? I think we all have a sense of how to do this. How do we open our ear to some sense of a deeper wisdom, right? How do we turn our energy from outwards to inwards to reverse that flow? It's not such a socially acceptable space, really. And we're opening ourselves to something that is unknown to us. Just that alone to recognize, right? So she goes through, just to recap what happens, right? She gathers up all of her worldly powers. She sort of adorns herself. So it's very sweet, right? We all do this. It's like we have some sense that we want to go somewhere, or even we want to meditate. So, so we set up our meditation cushion and we put on our meditation clothing, and, we do whatever we do to organize ourselves. Or, if we're going to get married, we go through all of these, things that we put on to get married. And that's an important part of the journey, is to sort of gather for ourselves our me. I think it's so great that the word in Sumer is me. All these powers that we gather are the me. And it's with this that we prepare ourselves, right? So she prepares herself, and then she speaks to her guide, right? So this witness part of ourself, this part of ourself that we know, perhaps we could say it's that spaciousness that we're experimenting with tapping into. Who is there when the me is not there anymore? Who's witnessing? Who could you speak to? Who could you call on? Right? Who is your guide? And then she gives the guide instructions. This is very interesting. Oftentimes we let the guide give us instructions, right? But in this story, she calls on her guide and she says, you have to do this for me. Please. And in a way you could think of it, this is a way she's praying. She's saying, will you help me in this way? If I'm really going for it, she says. I'm really going for it. And I'm afraid. And if you really go for it, chances are you will encounter some fear, right? So she says to her guide, I'm afraid. I feel unstable. I don't know what's going to happen. I might not come back. And can you help me? Will you help me in that space, right? So I'd love us all just to think about for a moment before we go on to the next part of the story, to think about who our guides are, right? Again, we have outer and inner guides. And it's been a while. We did this almost a year ago now at this point, where we went over the guide. So let's review again for ourselves, and I'd ask you to write these down. Who are your guides? Who are the people who you can count on in your life, who will stay with you? Who do you feel like you could call on in these places? Who's going to have your back, right? And there might just be one. One's plenty. Right?
And it might be outer and it might be inner. So you might have some sense of your inner guide. Maybe there's a name or a space for that you have. Write that down too. Okay? So just take a moment and mark those beings, places down for yourself. As you make your transformations, who is your support? Who's staying with you? I want to also offer that as you're writing down your guides and teachers, that it might be a quality of presence that you name, that you could recognize in many different beings. And the second part of this, as you're writing down your guides, or if you already have them, is to write down what instructions it is you might want to give those people or that person. So in your journey now, in the journey that you're on, how could you use help? If you get lost, if you, as you know yourself, really transformed, what would you ask of them? How do you want to be held? What do you need? So to think about who's on your list, or what came up for you there, and what instructions it is that came out. And can you offer that to someone else? So to notice what it is that you feel like you would like your guides to do for you. Can you offer that to others? What would that look like? And also, when you see your guides, if they're actual people, animals, whatever they are, to really make a point, one, to thank them. People may be your guides and they have no idea, right? But for yourself, when you see them, to make that mark, I think it's very beautiful in the story. The first thing Inanna does when she speaks to her guide, and it's interesting because in some translations it's translated as guide, and some translations translates it as servant. And those are one and the same thing. Someone who is truly a guide for you is in service to you. They are in service to your journey, not to their own, actually. And that recognition that someone is in service of your journey is extraordinary, you know? Like, you know, as royalty, as we sort of, Inanna as this queen, right? We all sort of take this royal thing, and part of us is going like, well, of course you should serve me. Of course you should help me, right? Without recognizing how extraordinary it is for someone to put their own journey aside and to step into the stream of yours and try to help you, right? So I find it moving in the story that the first thing she does is this long paragraph where she says to her servant, this is who you are. You're my support, you're my wisdom, you're the warrior that fights by my side, you're all of these things, right? She identifies that person with her own voice. That empowers that person for her. If she said to the guide or to the servant, you're okay, you know, you help me sometimes, like that, then probably she shouldn't be saying, so if I die in my path to the underworld, you know, can you go and get help for me? Right? So this is how we empower other people. We decide, we name them. It's through our vision. So we let them know what our vision is of them. You know, this is how I see you. Thank you. You know, and to think in your own life as you go through your life outside of this space. Are you letting people know what it is that you need? You know, how difficult it is for most of us to say, I need your support or I need your help. Can you give me some help with this, right? And maybe sometimes really directly to say, like this, right? I've been finding that, you know, David and I are having a baby, and I've been noticing, like, you know, all of my friends, so well-meaning, so beautiful, you know, so supportive. So many of my friends all over the world, you know, many of them have children, and I've been getting so many stories of all of their stories and all of their birth stories, and, you know, these amazing long emails of like, this is what you should do, and do this and do that, you know, in the best meaning way. And I finally said, I don't really think I can take anybody else's story. Like, I'm just trying to deal with my own story that's like happening. I'm just trying to deal with the passage that's happening for me. And David, as he will, you know, so beautifully said, well, you know, I think you just have to tell people, I'm not interested in hearing this right now. And I could feel how difficult that was, you know, for me to actually step forth and say, I need you to support me, and I need you to support me in this way. Because the first impulse, and maybe you share this, I don't know, but the first impulse is often just to be nice, just to be polite. It's like, oh, thank you so much, okay, you know. But if you notice that something is taking a toll, is hindering you from really being with your experience, from really being with whatever journey it's on, you know, of course, kindly, mindfully, you need to know that you can ask for people's support and ask for their help in certain ways. Now, of course, they may or may not meet that. But that doesn't really matter, actually. What matters is that you're gathering the strength to state for yourself, you know, this is what I think I need right now. And the guide might come back, the servant might come back and say, no, I don't think you should go to your father, grandfather, great-grandfather. Instead, I'm going to go to like this person and this person, and then you might say, okay, you probably know better. Because you're my guide, my support, my wisdom, the person who fights by me. So if you think it's better to go to my great-grandmother, go to my great-grandmother. Okay, right? But that sense of asking for what you need I think is really key. So, two things to consider here. Take the people who are your guides in your life, thank them. Notice them, give them a good vision, speak well to them, lift them up so that they can really do something for you. And treat other people that way. Give other people the equivalent of what the instructions were that you wrote down. It'll be different for everyone, right? But everyone is seeking some kind of support like that. And you have an opportunity in each moment when you meet someone. T.S. Eliot has this beautiful, he said in one of his interviews once so beautifully, he said, I realize that in every moment of my life, I have the possibility to turn towards God or away from God. And that actually those are the only two options I have. Whatever actions I might be doing, I'm either turning towards God or I'm turning away from God. Right? So in that moment when you're with someone else, you have two options. You can turn towards them or you can turn away from them. Right? And to turn towards them means to offer support in some way or another for whatever journey it is they're on. And we do the best we can. But if you have a sense of what it is, this is the other thing to tune into. If you aren't connected with what it is that you might need, the type of support that you need, it's very difficult for you to give support to someone else, actually. If you don't know how to receive support, if you're like walled off, right, then you can't really give support to anyone else either, because you haven't gone through that process of being vulnerable enough to take it in, right? So she speaks to her guide, she gives her instructions, and then she goes down and, whatever this means, right? She goes on her journey to the underworld, right? She's going through her path. And I love it. She gets to the doors of the underworld and she doesn't kind of go, excuse me, can I come in? She like slams her body against the gates of the underworld, right? So we think about this sometimes, the type of energy and force required in our practice to really meet what it is that we want to be meeting. And, if you've spent any time in retreat or any time really trying to sustain a meditation practice, you'll find that you need this energy at some point, right? Or any practice for that matter, any kind of practice that really deals with introspection for any prolonged period of time. You will find, in the beginning, you're probably like, this is nice. Let's look at this. At a certain point, you're like, come on! Like, I got to put my whole self there. And only with that force do the gates start to open. So we can think about it like those of you that are meditating regularly. Not force like aggression, but you can think of it like that degree of concentration that's so searing, so clear. It has to open the door. It has to make a way, right? You can't be sort of have a little bit here and have a little bit there. Everything has to go towards that. So how do we put our whole selves into something? This is another thing that's challenging for most of us most of the time. It's like we always keep just a little bit on the side, right? It's like, yeah, you'll notice it if you start probably, if you're in a relationship or you start dating someone or something. It's like, okay, give you a little bit, keep a little bit on the side, just, so I make sure I can go back if I need to, right? It's like, yeah, I'll leave some socks at your house. Just that for a little while, right? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I mean, it's like, you gotta test it out. But to recognize that that's our sort of general way of going at things. Sort of be like, to diffuse where we hold our powers, So, and eventually, if you want to make any real transformation, any real complete connection, you got to give your whole self, right? If you want to make a complete connection with something or someone, you got to go completely too. You can't expect that person or that thing or that realization, whatever it is, to completely come into you if you're like, yeah, I'm going to give you 40%, but you will give me 100%. And that's most of the time sort of the way what we're demanding of people. And we're like angry at them because they're not giving us all of their compassion or all of their support. And meanwhile, we're like, I want to give you about 20% of my support because I'm not so sure about you, or I'm not so sure about this situation, right? So what kind of, what does it mean? What kind of bravery, what kind of spaciousness do you need to have where things could just come and go, where you could be in your spaciousness and say, I just bring you my whole self. I bring you my whole spaciousness. And if you come in and go, it's fine. I give it all the time, giving it all the time, right? Working up to that, in degrees. But having that maybe as a vision that I could give my whole self all the time, right? Not just little pieces. So she throws herself against the gates of the underworld, and then there's this great passage through the gates, right? I won't go into this in depth today, but for anybody who's been studying yoga or studying systems that deal with the inner energy systems, typically there's 7 chakras, there's 7 gates to the underworld. And first, the 7 powers, the 7 worldly sense of those powers need to be stripped away to open the 7 gates of inner wisdom, okay? And what I love so much about this part is that she's gathered herself, she's like, I look good, I'm strong woman, I left it out actually just for clarity, but there's more, not more that are taken away, but she has like eye makeup that she puts on that's called Hey Man, Hey, which is really sort of great. She has like whole thing that she does, right? Her seductive sense of herself, how she sees herself. And to recognize that we have a way we hold ourselves and see ourselves all the time. You ever have this where you like pass by a mirror and you go, is that what I look like? You recognize you had this other sort of thought in your mind that was maybe worse or maybe better, Generally for me, it's like, I thought I looked better than that. Oh my God, like what's going on? So she has this sense, and at each gate, one of these sensations is stripped from her, and it's unexpected. She doesn't expect this. And this is really key, that in our transformations in our life, as we go through our life, surprise, right? Big news flash, things happen to you that you don't expect. Doesn't go the way you thought. You have this whole idea, right? Or like we were talking about dating. So it's like, you dress up for the date, and you like get all ready, and your date shows up and like spills spaghetti sauce all over your dress, like within the first 5 minutes. It's like, what is this? Like, why are you doing this, right? How did this happen? They don't act the way you think. Other people don't act the way you expect them to act. Situations don't work out the way you expect them to work. And this beautiful repetition of her saying, what is this? Partially affronted, partially taken aback, partially truly asking, what am I supposed to do with this if you take this away from me? And this beautiful repetition of, just be quiet. Let it take its process. The rules are perfect. Now that's profound trust, okay? As things are being stripped from you that you don't expect, to be able to say, this is perfect. I'll just keep going. So we can ask ourselves, like, what is it in her, the call, the inner listening, the focus on her journey that allows her to keep going, even though bit by bit, everything she knows about herself is stripped away until eventually, right, she's totally destroyed. It's very interesting. She gets to the gate, the final gate, and she says, I'm here to see my sister, which is what she really came for. I'm here to meet that part of myself that I've never encountered before, is what she's saying, which is really what most of us, when we're seeking any kind of transformation, we're seeking to meet some part of ourselves that we haven't met. We're seeking to come into union with that, right? And then she sort of becomes polite, and she's like, oh, my sister's husband's died. I've come to watch the funeral. And what's so great is she sort of says, I want to come and witness the funeral rites. And instead, she realizes she goes through it, right? Her sister's like, no, you don't witness the funeral rites. It's your funeral. You have to actually go through the experience, And so we have to all end on this before we take a short break. We can all sort of sense for ourselves, when I've talked about this many times in classes, I really try to think about this in my own practice and contend with it because it's hard. We hear this information, we get a meditation,
We have the ways that we avoid really being directly with ourselves. And what are the ways in which we just want to witness the experience? We just want to see. It's that kind of like every time we drive down from LA, we'll end up going like really slowly. And David and I are going, why are we going so slowly? Why are we going so slowly? You know, and then it's like a car. A car is on the side of the street. So everyone, of course, has to slow down to look at the car. So, you know, we get held up 20 minutes so everyone can go, oh, it's a car on the side of the street. Okay, now we could drive, right? But we have that kind of like witness mentality. We want to see what it is, right? When the little video comes up on Google, you know, YouTube or whatever it is that says, you know, look at this. We go, what was that? Oh, look at her destroyed body. Oh, you know, look at that guy's weird face. Oh, look at this, right? And to really have the transformation, it's like, well, let me give you the face, right? The sister's like, go through it. You have to go through the whole experience. And so we can sense, you know, are we willing to do that in our own life, and what would that mean at different times? So why don't we take we will take this break in silence, and when we come back, if everyone can take one of these scrolls, so you have one of those, and we'll come back at 10 till, okay? So take this time, enjoy the silence. It's so rare that we get to be with a group, not when I'm like, you know, someone's leading, but like in an open social space, but quiet. And just experiment and enjoy that time. And I'll see you back at 10 till.